all you lions, to another episode of the Raw Knowledge Podcast with your host, as ever, Alex Connor. We are well and truly into 2022. I hope everyone's got a foothold on it. And of course, if I'm back here, I'm back to drop some more knowledge with an insightful guest. And this morning / afternoon, I've got joining me Chad Landers. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be there in the future, as we were talking, because here in LA, it's still Tuesday afternoon, but it's Wednesday morning over there, right? So
that is right. That is right. Yeah. How is the weather in LA at the moment?
It's sunny. It's we did have a little bit of rain yesterday, but not anything anybody that normally gets rain would consider rain, So yeah, no, it's nice. It's year-round in LA, you pretty much can't complain, right? It's why it's the place to be if you're a personal trainer,
This is true. Very much like, as we call the Gold Coast, the GC. It's like, in some ways, it's got reminiscence of LA, Los Angeles. It's kind of got that buzz, that vibe. It's not quite the size or the magnitude of it, but again, it does definitely draw the health and fitness fanatics, which is always a blessing. Now, Chad, as ever, I like to start with, for people who may not know who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it. Give us a bit of a synopsis. Feel free to take as long as you want, whatever you feel is important for the listeners.
Sure. Well, I basically have been a one-on-one personal trainer for almost 29 years in Los Angeles now. It'll be 29 years come April that I moved here to take a job as a personal trainer in a private training studio, similar to what I own now. And I just had my 19th anniversary as a gym owner just last week. So yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. It's kind of hard to believe that the time has gone that quickly. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, between COVID more recently, or in the US back in 2008-9, we had a big, financial crisis, housing crisis, all this kind of stuff. So I've seen a lot in business and survived a lot. So I think that's been helpful when I talk on podcasts and different things, just to kind of, give people some guidance in how to deal with some of this bigger stuff. But when it comes down to it, my big thing is still just one-on-one personal training. The industry, at least in the US, over the last decade or so, kind of shifted to small groups and semi-private training. That was kind of the business model that most people did. I stayed with the one-on-one thing. And I think that helped me actually with COVID, because people felt more comfortable coming back in a one-on-one situation than they did into small groups and that kind of thing. But I didn't stay that way because of COVID. I had no idea COVID was coming around, obviously. It's just the way that I like to do things. To me, coaching is a very one-on-one personal thing. Now, obviously, different types of coaches who coach teams and stuff, that's very hard to do. But for me, when it's personal training, the key to it is personal. And I think that most trainers only think about the training part and not the personal part. And so the reason why I've been successful for so many years, I think, is that I focus on the personal part. And that's not just programming specifically to the client. That's, all the stuff that we talk about in between sets. And that's where the real coaching is. And it may have nothing to do, matter of fact, it probably has nothing to do with the Krebs cycle or macros or Z lines and sarcomeres. It probably has to do with what their wife or kids or business or what's going on in their life. Because most people come to the gym as a getaway, I guess, if you will. It's a way to leave all that stuff at the door and just focus on themselves, and maybe in an area where they've been insecure in their life, or maybe they had it at one point. Maybe they were, a jock in high school and lost it and are looking to get something back. And so for me, that works really great in the one-on-one, because people can be vulnerable in that one-on-one setting and open up and let me know really why they're really there. And once I know why they're really there, then I can help them do that, because the gym is a microcosm for life. And so anything that we're doing in the gym, the struggles to, maybe it's lose body fat, or maybe it's add some weight to their bench press, or whatever it is. Once they see that they can handle something that maybe takes time and is slow and requires a lot of effort, and nobody can do it for them. And once they see that, all of a sudden it becomes easier to ask for that raise at work, or to change jobs, or to ask somebody out that they thought was out of their league, or whatever it is. And so I've always found the gym as a microcosm for life. And if there's a way that I can basically make the hours that a client sees me their favorite hours of the week, then they're going to keep coming. And if they're going to keep coming, they're going to get results, because I don't have any quick fixes. I've been doing this for a long time. I can tell you, if there was a quick fix, I would have found it and I'd be doing it and I'd be rich, but there isn't. So the only thing that makes me successful is longevity, is having people that come in and having people that refer me other people. So that all requires time and commitment. And the only way to get that really is to create a real human connection with people and really care about them, and try to help them along through, this journey of life. And so for me, I do it in the gym with exercises. Somebody else might be a therapist and they do it on a couch or whatever. Somebody else might be fishing and it's getting out and fishing does it for them, whatever it is. For me, I do it at the gym, and for some people that really resonates well. So
yeah, that's a really salient,
very tangential. I know, but
it's good. No, this is why we're here, mate. It's raw, it's real, it's unscripted, and a really good salient point as well to start on that. There's I use that metaphor like there's cement to the bricks, and personal training or coaching is sometimes very different than what we think. Like you said, rather than the mechanistics of training and nutrition, which is important, and we need to have some level of understanding, but I feel that knowledge isn't taught. There was something that I started thinking about after listening to the podcast that you did on Iron Culture. It's where I started listening and learning about yourself, and it got me pondering. And I've spoken to a few clients about this, and I said, this, I've asked over the years, and I ask them more frequently, why do you come to these one-on-ones? And you probably had this as well, and perhaps some people listening as trainers or even other business owners. A client will come back and go, oh, I missed the one-on-one. I really want the one-on-one. You go, okay, what is it about the one-on-one that you're not getting with maybe the online or even the product, right? Or whatever they're investing in. And they, in a matter of way, it's the conversations that we have with these, our clients, and building relationships and being a good human. I want to ask you, Chad, when you started out, was there a moment where you started to have a realization? It might not have been an aha moment, but when you started to go, hey, like, okay, it is important to understand, obviously, the science, but wow, what keeps people coming back is my interaction, the meaningful conversations that you have with them, and actually unpacking the human. And I think, we talk about, I like to segregate it into training, nutrition, lifestyle. We can say that in a matter of ways, but it's the lifestyle element, which without working outside of our scope, I find a lot of trainers are not focusing on, or they're not taught about, which is really listening to the person in front of you and trying to get on the same page, rather than trying to get perfection of, hey, we need to adhere to, this, we need to adhere to that, we need to do all of these things. So perhaps talk us through your beginning stages, and maybe when you started to grasp that concept, or maybe it was later on in your journey. I'm not sure.
Sure. I think it happened gradually. When I first started training people, I already had a degree in kinesiology, which, back in the early 90s, that was pretty much unheard of. Nobody had a degree yet in kinesiology. Personal training, there certainly weren't degree programs in that. There were some certifications around, but nothing was really consequential. So I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, I would say, because, I had this 4-year degree. And as a matter of fact, for many, many years, I refused to get certified just because of that. I'm like, I'm not going to, get this stupid certification when I spent, 4.5 years in college. So I really had a chip on my shoulder about it. I was fortunate that because I was well educated, I was able to do good work as far as the nuts and bolts of training goes. But one of the things that would always surprise me was these trainers who maybe weren't as good with the X's and O's of training, but they were busier than I was, and had clients, and the clients seemed to be happy regardless of what they were doing. And I'm like, well, something's going on there, and for the longest time, I would be very judgmental, and it would put me off seeing these. Why are they successful? Well, they shouldn't be successful. They don't have a degree, blah, blah, blah. The stuff you tell yourself when you're insecure in your own shit. And eventually what I realized was there's something that they're doing that's right. The client doesn't know. They don't know training. They don't know nutrition. So they don't know if they're being taught properly or not. But what they know is that that person makes them feel good and is invested in them to some degree. And so that was a big light bulb moment for me. It's like, well, if I can combine what I know scientifically and train people safely, which I pride myself on not hurting anybody. That's the number one thing. Getting results, obviously. But really, once I realized, it's about that relationship. And I was always pretty good at that just because of who I am as a human being. But the coin didn't drop that was really what would make the business grow. That I didn't need another, certification or read another book or watch somebody else's videos, or I didn't need any of that stuff. And when I give talks to trainers back when we used to do, live events, I'll ask trainers in the room, raise your hand if you don't think you're qualified to train clients right now, that you don't know enough about, the human body or programming to do it. And of course, nobody's going to raise their hand. Everybody feels like they're, able to train clients. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, then why are you trying to get certified in a new apparatus? Is you think that by being kettlebell certified, now all of a sudden clients are going to come running to your door if they're not already? You already know how to train people. So it's something else. And it could be the vibe you give off either, on the phone, or if they come into the gym and meet you for the first time. I mean, I can't tell you the number of trainers I've seen when somebody comes in and they almost have like a mean look on their face, like, what are you doing here? Coming into our domain. It's like, no, you should be like welcoming and, hey, get to know these people. They just came in. I mean, business is so hard to come by. The last thing you want to do is turn somebody off by your attitude when they walk in the door. But I've seen that, time and time again. So, that was part of it. Seeing who I considered, poor trainers being successful. I'm like, well, there's something that I can learn there. But then the experience I had with my wife, because my wife was one of my first clients in LA, and that was way back in 93. And it's a long story, but basically there was an earthquake in 94. We became roommates. We became friends with benefits. She almost kicked me out. Then we ended up together. It became an official thing. And so that was great. But she also happened to have a pretty dramatic physical transformation training with me. And that led to her not being satisfied being in the background of her career, because when she wasn't comfortable with her body, and also being a woman in a very male dominated industry, she does sound for feature films. And she wasn't as willing to stay in the background and let somebody else take credit for her ideas, or maybe to go ahead and stand on her own and take the bullet if something was shitty. And so once she was able to do that, and her career flourished, and she ended up, winning 2 Oscars for sound, one for The Bourne Ultimatum and one for Skyfall. I saw how that physical transformation really can open people's lives up outside of the gym. And it's not like she ever got a 6-pack or anything like that. It's just the fact that the confidence she was able to get, and not having to worry about that when she walked into a room, to a meeting anymore, and just being able to focus on her craft and her creativity. And that was a big eye opener for me. And what I see most of the time with clients, unless I'm training like an actor to get ready for a role and they need to have a 6-pack, most people, even if they tell you they want to get abs when they come into the gym, they don't realize how hard that is, or how long that's going to take for the average person who's not even close to it. They really don't want that. But you can't just tell them that when they come in, but they do want the confidence that they think they'll have by having a six pack. And we can give that to them without ever having to get to the six pack. And that's just from taking care of themselves and from doing the work in the gym and progressing from A to B, being stronger than they used to be, and wearing looser fitting clothes and all that kind of thing. So I think trainers too often think that, well, we've got to, poke and prod and measure these people and do before and after pictures. And there's got to be these dramatic transformations. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. As a matter of fact, I rarely, if ever, will take before pictures or make somebody, do anthropometric measurements or that kind of thing. Imagine being scared to death to go to a gym, so scared that you're not willing to do it on your own. And so you hire a trainer, and then going in, and what's the first thing the trainer does? Make you pull up your shirt and measure your fat. How intimidating is that? We're not doing that really to benefit the client. We're doing that for us, hoping that they will have a dramatic transformation. We'll have these cool before and after pictures to sell. Well, I'll do it if the client wants it. I'm like, hey, if you want to do before and after pictures and stuff, we can. It's always great to have a good starting point. But if you don't want to do it, we don't have to do it. It's not going to change the way that I train you one bit. So, that's really, the key. I think it's meeting the client where they're at and giving them what they need. And sometimes they don't know what that is, and that just takes time. But, if I haven't trained somebody, I don't care if they're an athlete or, an elderly person, I'm going to start slow and see what happens over the first, few sessions and few weeks and ramp things up anyway. And during that time, we'll have plenty of conversations and develop a rapport and a trust, and we'll be able to get to those places and find out why they're really there and what is it in their life that they're unhappy with, that they think spending time in the gym is going to fix it. Because there's always something like that. And it could be something health related. It could be, their blood sugar is high and they want to, avoid becoming diabetic. It might be more aesthetic, hey, I needed to use the belt extender on the airplane and I was mortified and I just never want to have to, use that belt extender again. Whatever it is, we'll find out what that is. And people aren't necessarily going to tell you that straight away. Because again, they've got to be vulnerable. It's already hugely vulnerable for them to just come to the gym to begin with. And I think we forget that. We are, as trainers especially, or fitness enthusiasts who are totally into training, we forget that there's people out there who this is intimidating and it's foreign to them and they don't know. There's so much information out there now. I mean, yes, it's great because all the best information is out there and it's free. But if you don't know who's good and who's not, the best salesman's probably going to win. So then you're going to end up doing a fast or a cleanse or something crazy that you don't need to do. And then when you fail at it, you think, well, I'm just a failure. I can't do this fitness thing, And so I think that, we just have to be cognizant of that as trainers and other fitness enthusiasts, that those people who are new to the gym or new to our client list, they don't know what they don't know. And we can't get upset with that and can't be frustrated by the process. And I think I see this a lot with young trainers. They want clients who are already, self-motivated. They basically want people who are easy to train, because they don't want to have it be a struggle, So good luck finding, if clients were self-motivated, they wouldn't need you. I mean, some of them would, some of them just want a little bit more expertise, but a lot of them, the whole reason why they're going to you is for accountability. That's why I keep clients for 20, 25 years. It's not because they don't know how to train by that amount of time. It's that, what? They know if there's an appointment with me, they're more likely to show up than not. If they don't have an appointment with me, work, life, whatever is going to get in the way. So there's nothing wrong with that. I'm fine. If they need me just for accountability to show up, great. If they need me because they want to show up to the gym and they don't want to think, I had a trainer reach out to me. I think he listened to the Iron Culture podcast and he reached out to me and was like, I don't understand this, you keeping clients, for decades. I thought we were supposed to, teach clients how to work out and to kick them, like out of the nest and make them self-sufficient. And I'm like, why don't you grow your own food and raise your own cattle and then kill them and make, why don't you do that? Because that's not your thing. You want to just go to the grocery store and buy the food and eat it. Well, these people, training isn't necessarily their thing. Very few people will come to you because they want to learn how to be their own personal trainer.
Mm.
They're going to come to you because they want somebody who can take this load off of their shoulders. They want to get the results, but they don't want to be a trainer and a nutritionist and all. They just want you to tell them what to do. And they want you to be there and support them and show up and not beat them down if they screw up and miss, to just kind of be a coach.
Ultimately, I like something you said there was meeting the client where they're at, just to back to that as well.
Sure.
And that was a good metaphor that you finished on, in terms of it's not always about going, hey, we have to make someone autonomous like us or into a coach or a trainer, as you said. Sure, they're going to leave you, if they do leave you, better than where they found you. But ultimately, like you said, it's those little key things like accountability, the things that you can't almost touch and feel, but they're the things that keep coming back. Being a good human as well,
right?
Being able to have interactions with people. I see a big disconnect, Chad, in the industry where, and I don't know how it is in LA, but here in Australia, we've got a lot of governing bodies, they're certifying trainers, but I don't see a lot of focus on the client interaction, the personal side, if you want to call it psychology, if you want to call it personal development. And I think this is why it's critical to get a mentor or even to work with an established trainer, because they can say, hey, this is what we've learned. This is, like you mentioned before, the Krebs cycle and all the pragmatic side. But ultimately, you start talking about that to someone, I mean, you'll get the odd client, but their eyes are going to glaze over. And as you said, it's not what they're here for. It's not about always going, hey, we have to do it like this. You mentioned before about being flexible, being adaptable as well. Hey, sometimes, yeah, right, this might be the way I run my business, but for this client, maybe that's not what we do. And we will start with something easy and light. It doesn't always have to be perfect or in this certain way in structure. I'd love to know, and I know this is quite a popular question. It's a difficult one, so answer it whatever comes to mind for you. But if you could go back to the start of your training journey, right back to the start, and you could have 1 to 2 minutes with yourself, what are the things you would say, or perhaps the advice you would offer in terms of perspective, to say, hey, look, Chad, here's some things to consider which may help you along the journey or alleviate some stress?
Sure. Well, I would say the biggest thing has nothing to do with getting clients or keeping clients or how to train a client. It has to do with money, because most trainers, at least in the US, started out as an employee at a big box gym. They're getting paid, very little amount of what the gym is actually charging for the training. Mm-hmm. And so at some point they decide either they want to, go out on their own, be an independent contractor at another gym, or open their own gym, be self-employed, or whatever it is. And all they see is the big numbers. They don't look at anything else. So they say, oh, okay, you know what? The gym's charging, I'm going to use dollars here. Let's say the gym's charging $100 a session. They're only giving me $50. And by the time I pay my taxes and all that, I'm taking home $25. If I go out on my own, I'm going to take all 100 home. Mm-hmm. And that's all they think about is they're taking 100 home. Well, you forget you're now self-employed. You still have to pay taxes. Not only do you have to pay the taxes you were paying that were being taken out of your check, but you have to pay the employer side too. You're self-employed. You have to pay self-employment tax. So that is a big disconnect that I see. And so trainers set themselves up for failure. If they're going to go out on their own, what they should do is every single time somebody writes them a check or sends them a Venmo or whatever, when they deposit that, they need to have either another account at that bank or at another bank. Everything's easy nowadays because you can do things electronically. And they need to take, I would say, a third of it, or 30% or whatever, and just move it right on over to that other account. So, you always hear pay yourself first. Well, actually, you don't pay the tax man first. Pay them first, then you pay yourself, and then you can deal with all the rest. But I can't tell you how many trainers, myself included, set themselves up for years of living hand to mouth, not saving any money, not having a retirement, And at the end of the year, they didn't pay their quarterly taxes because they didn't have the money saved up to pay it quarterly. So then they had this huge amount due at the end of the year they didn't have. They put it on a credit card or whatever it was, pay some penalties, and that cycle just keeps going on and on. And all of a sudden, you're chasing your tail, and you've got all this credit card debt, and you're working all the time. And you're like, how can I be working so much? And my hourly rate is so good, but I have no money to show for it. And so that's the biggest thing that I would tell myself in hindsight. I would have stopped trying to play this game that I was playing in LA. You know, my wife, when I started, hanging out with her and the people she hung out with, she's a little bit older than me. She was certainly more established in her career. The people she was hanging with, I mean, I'm talking, Oscar winners and directors and producers and all this stuff. And I'm just some fucking trainer. And I feel really out of place there. So, if we're going out to dinner or drinks or whatever, I wouldn't say, I can't go this, I can't, spend this money. I would go, I'd put it on a credit card, whatever. I wouldn't say I didn't want to be embarrassed, that was a huge mistake. So allowing myself to get into some massive credit card debt and not, paying my taxes quarterly when I should, and having to, the stress level was so high. And then I would still do something dumb like go and buy a new car because I thought I could afford the car payment. I mean, it was crazy stuff. So I had to, at one point, finally backtrack, buy a beat up old used car, drive that around, pay down, credit card debt, and right the ship, because I was doing it all wrong. It's amazing I was able to survive as long as I did doing it wrong. Now the reason why I've survived is because I did it right, because I couldn't have had a brick and mortar business if I hadn't have done things right. So those first 9-10 years I was in LA just as an independent trainer, that's where I really fucked up and got lucky to survive and learned a lot of lessons. Now, having had a facility, now I run things much different. And so I was able to, when things were going great before COVID, have lines of credit open for the business, separate from me personally, because I'm a corporation. I was able to, have very little debt and good credit, so that when the time came when COVID hit, and I was able to get, disaster loan from the government, I'd set myself up in a position to get that. If I had had shitty credit and I'd had a lot of debt, they wouldn't have given me that loan and I would have went under. But that loan allowed me to survive COVID and do well and still be here. And so I think the biggest thing for any trainer to learn is how to handle their finances, because that's the thing that I see everybody go wrong on. And especially when you're young, because man, you want to go out, you want to do things, you want to party, you want to have fun, you want that cool car like the next guy has. And I see it time and time again. And it's like, man, if you can just be patient and set yourself up by doing everything right, put aside the money for the taxes. If you think you want to have, a down payment on a house one day, put that in another account. Start saving smartly and start budgeting and seeing, well, what can I actually afford? Don't just bury your head in the sand and figure out, oh, it'll happen. And I see this also. I've seen trainers who, when they're busy, won't take on new clients. And I've never known anybody who couldn't fit somebody new in somewhere on the schedule. But they're like, oh no, I'm just as busy as I want to be. Well, you know what? Next month you might lose 2 or 3 clients. Shit happens. People get sick. People move. People's job, they lose their job. They get transferred, whatever. All of a sudden in our business, losing 1 or 2 clients can be a huge cash flow hit to you. So I always like to be way busier. And rarely does everybody that I train come in, because like I said, life gets in the way. But occasionally I'll have a week where all of a sudden, oh my God, I've got like 40, 50 one-on-one sessions. Oh, this is insane. Normally that's not the case. Normally it's between 25 and 30 because people are in and out. But I'll take those few busy weeks that happen when everybody's in town and everybody's available, because that's rare that it happens. So you are never going to see me, if I can help it, turn down business. And that's where it's good, obviously, that I have a gym and I have other trainers, because now if I have to turn down business, I have somebody else that I can put them with. So that makes it even easier. And that was always the goal, right? Is to have such a good business that you couldn't take people on and you needed other trainers to take over for that.
Mm.
So yeah, for me, if I could go back to my younger self, it would be a serious money talk, especially as related to credit cards and trying to play that game of, keeping up appearances that I had money that I didn't have.
Yeah, super valuable. I think a lot of people need to hear that, regardless of whether they're trainers or not.
Right.
It's really, especially in the demographic where we live, there's a people like to look good. There's
Sure.
people with money, but then there's a lot of people who have the appearance of having money, but they don't.
Right.
And they're just getting themselves into mad debt, like you said, keeping up with the Joneses. I think if we could learn that early on, especially as business owners and trainers, instead of always looking at accumulation, even retention as well. We think about like a bucket that's got a lot of holes in it. Well, maybe fix the holes or get a new bucket. Learn retention and oh man, have a little look. And it doesn't have to be hard, like you said, Chad. It's basic stuff, and
Right.
you went through it there very simply. A lot of people, like you said, they bury their head in the sand. But I think that's a great bit of advice for everyone listening, regardless of where they're at, because I do think we do waste money, and it's not about counting every penny, but oftentimes when we look at the numbers, we can go, oh, actually, there's probably a few things I could be doing better.
Right.
I
Well,
want
it's
to,
no different than calories, right?
yeah,
It's
but
like,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah, if I don't tell anybody, I mean, maybe if I'm getting somebody, I have 3 weeks to get them ready for a movie. That's a different story. But the average person, I'm not going to make any kind of judgment. If you want pizza, if you want, you can have whatever you want. I would
Mm-hmm.
prefer you, weigh and measure your food and use my fitness pal so you get some idea of the cost of that food.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can make a choice. And you know what? If it works for you on that day and you're okay with, the weight fluctuations that'll happen for the next couple of days or whatever, then do it. I mean, there's a freedom in that. But at least you take ownership of it and you're not like, oh, I don't understand why I can't lose weight. Well, yeah, you do. You decided, that you had pizza and you wanted it and you knew how much it was costing you calorically and you were okay with it. So it's the same thing with money. It's like, well, you can have that new car if that's what you want, but just know that you're going to put other stuff then off, whether that's a down payment for a house, whether it's having an emergency fund should something come up. And I think if you want to set yourself up for success long term, you need to get that foundation in order first, and then you have the benefit of time. And time is your best friend when it comes to investing, just like it is with dieting. And so if you take your time and that money is able to grow and you reinvest dividends and that kind of thing, all of a sudden you've got freedom of choice, freedom of whatever kind of car you want, whatever kind of house, because you've got money in the bank. Your money's been working for you. I mean, if I was 20 years old and knew what I know now about money and had saved accordingly from 20 to now that I'm 53, I would have millions and millions of dollars. I mean, that's just how it would have worked, because I know what I've been able to do just in the last decade plus, because I had like no real retirement before I was 40 years old. I had to play catch up. Luckily, I was playing catch up during one of the best bull markets that we've ever seen in the US. But
Just a quick one, guys, before we carry on with the podcast. For any of you who are interested in taking your health and physique to the next level and you want to remove the guesswork, you're not quite getting the progress that you want, you're not seeing what you want to see in the mirror, and you're not feeling like you're really moving in the right direction, then click the link in the bio below, the apply button, where you can contact me. We can organize a free consultation, no obligation, and discover whether it's a good fit as coach and client. All right, back to it.
But yeah, if I'd been able to do that then, so yeah, I would start having that money talk. I mean, the second I, took my first client, it's like, boom, all right, I'm taking this money, I'm putting this to the tax man, I'm putting this toward my retirement. This is going to go to bills. And then everyone that comes in, I'm just going to keep dividing that up. And then you'll know, actually what your cash flow is, what money you're making, what you can afford. and you can start making those choices. And I make no judgments on what choices people make. I just want them to be aware of it and what they're doing and the consequences, and not just throw up their hands and be like, I don't understand. I don't understand why I'm broke. I don't understand why I can't lose weight. It's like, yeah, that it's all there in black and white if you're willing to take a close look at it. And most people aren't willing to take a look at it, because that's too hard. That's painful, because then we don't feel like we're as successful as we're maybe making ourselves out to be.
Very true. The converting it and using the analogy with food is a great parallel that I love to draw as well. And even you work with people in the financial sector, I always find it really interesting when, us as trainers, we're working with people that on paper have a qualification or do things that are far more complex, but they struggle with the accountability. It's really ironic, and drawing those conclusions to someone's career, I find, can be really, really powerful. Like you said, hey, it's the same thing. It's just a different medium, but
right.
It is uncomfortable, like you said, to look at the facts. The numbers don't lie, and you can go, oh, actually, we better check that. With when you were starting out, apart from that challenge, that financial hurdle, were there any other challenges or some of the biggest challenges you faced, and more in the realms of generating business as a new trainer, especially coming into a place like LA? A lot of people are afraid. A lot of trainers, they come in, how am I gonna make money? And again, it's a lot of the basics, but we can think about, hey, there's a lot of trainers out there, but how many good ones? There's a lot of drivers on the road, but how many good ones? Sometimes it works in opposite. But I'd love to know more about your journey at the start, and again, how did you get to become established, or when you had organic clientele and inquiries coming through, and what did that look like for you, Chad?
Sure. So when I first came to LA, it was to take a job at a private personal training studio that a guy was opening. A guy, similar to me, how I, opened up a private studio and now have other trainers. So that's what he was doing. He'd been a trainer in LA for a number of years, opening his facility, needed trainers. I was working at Bally's Casino in Las Vegas at the time in the health spa, and I met him and just struck up a conversation because that's what I do. And turns out, I got a degree in kinesiology, and he's like, I'm opening up a gym. Come down, see if you want to be a trainer. And so I loved it in LA much more than Las Vegas when I came down to visit. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. And so it was at a private place, not a big box, but it's still, I was working for somebody else. And that's really, in the beginning, in all likelihood, the only way a trainer is going to get clients, because you have to be where the clients are in the beginning. And so they're at gyms, they're looking for training, they're going to the gyms. So I don't see anything wrong. It gets poo-pooed a lot about, big box gyms. And I know that in a lot of ways they can suck, but there's no better place to really cut your teeth training clients, and all different types of clients, all different types of personalities, crazy people. I mean, it's a good place to really learn how to deal with people and find out if this is really the business for you or not. Because it's all about dealing with people. It's not about, bench pressing and getting six packs, really it's about relationships with people, and, how do you hold somebody accountable? How do you, make them do what they need to do without pissing them off and making them quit, or whatever. All that stuff that you got to learn in the beginning is great. And like I said, plus you're gonna get your clients that way. So I was no different. I, even though I'd managed a health club in Illinois for a number of years and had this degree in kinesiology, when I came to LA, I was nobody in LA. Nobody could give a shit about my degree in kinesiology. I was fortunate. I was at a private place and they gave me clients. But over the first 2 years I was there, I started to notice that I was getting clients on referrals from existing clients. I wasn't getting any more of the walk-in traffic anymore. That's what those other guys who maybe didn't have the degrees, that's what was happening with them. And finally it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm basically generating all this business for this guy because of this referral stuff. Maybe he'll give me, an extra $1 an hour or something per session, just to show that he appreciates the fact that I'm doing good work and I actually have a legit degree. And he said no. And so that basically lit the fire under me. It's like, well, you know what, then I'm going to go out on my own. And so that's exactly what I did. Two years in, there was a Gold's Gym that at that time did not take any kind of cut for rent for clients. They just wanted the new members. And so and I was already working out there myself. So I was like, boom, all the clients that I wanted to go with me went with me over there to the Golds. And that's where I spent 8 years basically. And I got to the point where because of referral, I got very few clients actually at the gym that saw me there, which always surprised me. So I thought, how can you see what I'm doing with clients and what these other Yahoos are doing? And, but people just don't know, some people, there were so many weirdo trainers. There was one I called Sergeant Vilko that was like a drill sergeant, and he would like just bark at like 10 different clients, all on different machines. And he could have some middle-aged woman that he was training and sent her over to where I was working out with a client who was like 6'6", and she would just hop on the machine. I'm like, don't you want to like adjust the machine or change the weight? Oh no, he just told me to come and do 15. I'm like, oh my God, how does this guy have clients? These people are going to get hurt. And some of them did get hurt, but it was weird. They would think it was their fault that they got hurt, because it couldn't have been that this Sergeant Bilko was just a bad trainer. It must be that I'm a bad client, So I saw a lot of that kind of craziness, at the commercial gym. But I also was able to establish myself over those 8 years. Again, lots of referral business. And that's when I was able to realize, you know what, I'm making enough money now. I've righted the ship of debt that I was on. I think I can open up my own facility. And so that just happened to be, this was right after the year after 9/11 here in the US. And my wife and I had bought a house. So we moved just a little ways away from where we used to live. And in that area where we bought our house, there had been a small mom and pop commercial gym. And they had went under after 9/11. So it was just sitting there vacant 5 minutes from my house. And so my wife said, babe, you should call on that space. You should call on that space. So I did. And now I've been there 19 years. So, but I took my time. I mean, I spent, 2 years at that private place, getting enough referral business to realize, you know what, I'm being successful because of me now, not because of this guy. And so I was able to go out on my own. And then it took me 8 years to have enough organic business growth to realize, now I'm in a position where I can start this business and not, put myself in a bad way. And now it's been, 19 years of just making mistakes and refining them and learning, from them and continuing to go forward. So yeah, it's been a journey, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. It's I was laughing there, Sergeant Bilko, because we had someone back in the day we used to call Sergeant Bilko as well in my friendship circle. So I'm
just saying.
I got that. It was extra funny, but I have conversations with my fellow coaches sometimes when they, sometimes they feel a bit down. You know how it is. We go through periods where you lose, multiple clients. Sometimes you think, fuck, what's going on? But they usually make room for more fitting clients to a degree. But it doesn't matter. You have to go through that journey, and it takes years before you go, oh, that's like you said, that's the way of things. So usually, you can onboard clients. But I often say, hey, look around, look at some of the trainers that are generating revenue. If they can do it, you can do it. Because as you said, there's people, I don't know that I don't think the barrier to entry is very high with trainers. And to this day, again, a good thing to consider. You mentioned it before with clients. People don't know what they don't know. And I truly believe, I like to have the belief that people are doing the best with what they have. There are obviously people who are a little bit, conniving out there for sure. They have hidden agendas, but for the most part, I think people are doing their best. So, you see these Sergeant Bilko characters. I always say you've got that like female gym trainer. She's like a poodle, she's like, let's get sweaty, let's do it, and she means well, but she kills it. But no even focus on form, technique, nutrition. There's nothing. That the clients never get results. You got like 2 testimonials, but they're always busy. right? They come with that energy. They come with that. So I think, hey, don't necessarily to the trainers, don't try and be something you're not, but understand that the market always makes room for good people. And
Sure, absolutely.
Like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but there's a little bit of, hey, maybe we'll adjust that machine. Maybe let's lighten the load. Maybe let's talk about how we can gauge the load. Again, meet people where they're at. Don't overwhelm them, but just give them what we think might be not enough is usually more than enough for clients. And I was having this conversation lately, and you can add on to this, Chad, because I'm sure you'll have some value to add in your own perspective. But I was speaking to a friend, and I said, look, I'm quite astounded by the feedback that I get in terms of, I always think I need to be doing more and providing a better service and this, that, and the other. And people sort of are watching in the wings, and they'll say, hey, I saw you do this, and this is why I want to train. I think, wow, it's because in my head, I'm not doing enough. Perhaps that's my perfectionist mentality, and she said, well, we have to realize the perspective from other people, and people are watching, people are noticing, and ultimately we have to kind of see that sometimes from not our own viewpoint, but others. So oftentimes by just, doing the basics once again and keeping it simple, which I know is something that you do phenomenally well. And I want to talk about that now in terms of transitioning to online. But yeah, I think that's a big takeaway for a lot of trainers, is that what you think it might take is not quite what you think, but mastering the basics and doing all those little things we don't want to do is the crux to build a successful business or become, a personal trainer that continues to generate clients and wealth.
Right.
We talk about now everyone's trying to be an online trainer, right? And, everyone wants to live this online nomad lifestyle and work from anywhere. And that's all well and good. But what are some of the biggest mistakes you see from trainers trying to scale online? And can you tell us about your own experience, whether you do much online training and why you continue to do the one-on-one? I'm really passionate about this myself, because I feel that you can't have one without the other, and you just can't beat getting face to face with people. And I think it's kudos to you that you're still doing it, because you probably could have tapped out years ago with the online. And if you've got your own facility, I'm sure that you've got trainers who are generating revenue and paying rent. So I kind of, to add on to that question, like why do you still do the one-on-one, but also talking through some online considerations for people who are trying to create a successful business online as a coach that's doing good work.
Well, I personally, I don't do a lot of online stuff. I did a little bit during COVID out of necessity during the shutdowns. But the one thing I can say is I really don't think too many people can be successful if they are starting out as an online trainer, if they've never trained people in person one-on-one, because you just, the training is about that coaching, and that what happens in between sets when you're talking and stuff. It's really hard to develop a rapport with somebody you don't know over, Skype or Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. I mean, basically you're just trying to get through the workout, which is all well and good, but that's not really what training's all about. Training is about people and relationships and being there for each other, which is the reason why I still do one-on-one. I mean, I'm better at it than I've ever been before. So I've got this, 30 years of experience. Why would I stop doing it now? I'm just getting really damn good at it, and I expect 5 years from now, I'll be like, damn, what was I thinking 5 years ago? I am really good at this, now. You should be continuing to get better. I made a post the other day. It's like, if you're not currently better than you've ever been at your job right now, then you need to rethink your methodologies or find a new job, because you should be better than you've ever been right now. Your clients deserve that. You deserve that. And so for me, if I didn't go in and train people one-on-one, I don't know what I would do with myself. I mean, I don't golf. I'm not going to, start golfing all of a sudden. And I like that interaction. I like going in and connecting with people and being a part of their life. One of the things that, I don't know if they still teach this, but they used to teach trainers, don't have a personal relationship with your clients. You just have a relationship at the gym. You shouldn't, fraternize outside of the gym. I'm like, are you crazy? I mean, those are my best friends or my clients. It's like, that's the people that I see. I don't see people other than other trainers that I work with and clients, and so of course those are people that I socialize with. It's a very weird thing to me to be like, oh no, you couldn't possibly have a relationship with them. And I think personally gyms did that in the old days. They didn't want clients, customers of the gym and trainers to get too close for a relationship, because they didn't want the trainers to just up and leave and take the clients with them. So that's what I think that really was all about. It had nothing to do with necessarily best practices for trainers. I mean, obviously you don't want some trainer that's hitting on clients. That's a totally different thing. They obviously should avoid that. But having a personal relationship, I mean, I give my clients, rides. I'll give them advice. I'll do whatever I need to do. I mean, my relationship with them is just as strong, if not stronger, outside of the gym as inside of the gym. And I like being somebody who is a strong, stable force in people's lives, somebody that they know they can count on. And that's just who I am as an individual. It happens to have been good for business too, because I think people like having that person in their corner. But I'm still that same person, even if clients stop coming in. I don't stop checking in with them. I don't stop texting them or messaging them. And when I see good things happening in their lives, congratulate them or whatever. They don't have to be coming in training with me to have a relationship with me, and I continue relationships with clients, or really anybody that I meet that I like and click with. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people that I've never trained, but maybe their ex trained with me. And so they met me and they knew me, and I stay in contact with people and referred me like their new boyfriend. I've had two. This is kind of funny. So I had an actor client that I trained.
Yeah.
And two of his ex-girlfriends, because I just thought they were just cool people, I stayed in contact with. Well, both of them had me train their current boyfriends, when they were like looking for somebody to train them. And I'm like, these are two people. One of them I did train a little bit, and I actually train her now too. But at the time when they initially reached out to me, and that's all from relationships, they didn't really know my work personally. They knew it through their boyfriends or whatever, but they knew that, hey, this is somebody that I can trust to send this person that I'm in love with, that is intimidated by the gym. I can send them to, and I think that they're going to really click, personality wise. And I get that kind of stuff all the time, or either clients that maybe I haven't seen for 5 or 10 years come back to me, or people refer to me. I've got people's, kids now that I trained, but I trained their parents years ago, and now I train the kids. I mean, you name it, it runs the gamut. And all that is from relationships. I'm going to give you another example. I just talked to a girl today. I was training her aunt. I trained this girl's mom back in 1993 originally. And I trained her mom all the way up until she gave birth to this girl that I was talking to. This girl's now like 25 years old. And so this girl lives in France. She's an assistant to one of the heads of one of the movie studios there now. She's, had this great young career. Another one of my clients, who's an exec at another studio here in LA, he just took his daughter to France. She's got like a 6-month thing at the UN or something. I don't know. And so I connected those two girls. Now, these two girls were like, 22 and 25 or whatever. And here's this old 53-year-old dude. But because of my relationships that I've established with their parents or their grandparents or whatever, I can connect people. And that keeps me kind of young and in the mix. And I like that everybody likes to like be the person who knows a guy, like, oh, I know a guy, or I know whatever. And it works in converse too. I like being the guy that people can count on, that they know to. So if somebody's looking for somebody that's going to give them good training, good nutrition advice, I know the guy for you. And by being part of that whole sphere and relationships, now I can do that. I can, I guarantee you, if somebody reaches out to me and they're like, hey, do you know anybody in Gold Coast? Yeah, I know a guy,
Yeah,
it's like that kind of thing. It's all about relationship building. But it's
exactly.
got to be authentic, and it's got to be organic and legitimate. And far too many people, you'll see this sometimes at live events, and people come up and talk to you after you've given a presentation, and you can tell like something's off. They're not about creating a real relationship with you. They think you can somehow help further their career for them by them knowing you, and nothing can be further from the truth. I can't help you. It's like I got my own shit to deal with. But people think that they think, because hey,
Yeah.
you're a speaker on the circuit, so you must be, able to help me. But relationships are everything in, I don't care what business it is. But especially in a service business, we're providing a service, and people need to find that service valuable in order to keep paying us. And so if you're somebody who they can't see themselves doing without in their life, they're probably going to keep coming in for as long as they find that value. But like I say, I'm not one to, just because somebody stops coming and training with me, shut off the relationship. I'm going to keep reaching out. I see it's their birthday. I see they've gotten married. I see they've booked a movie, whatever it is. I'm going to reach out and say so. And that's not with the expectation that they're going to come back in and train with me. It's just because I'm being a human being.
Yeah, I think I love that. I love everything you said there, Chad. It really strikes a chord with me. And a phrase I use is often health and relationships. I think that they're the most important assets in your life. One, because if you don't have your health, well, you don't live. So everything else is just, obsolete after that. And again, relationships, it's everything. And I got to thinking, I've been having some insightful conversations with my clients lately. And as you said, if you're good at what you do, you become friends with your clients. Sure, you have an air of professionalism, but you attract the people that are going to get on with you, who you can have a bit of a joke and have a laugh with. You don't want to be standing on eggshells or having someone that, if you have a client turn up and you're like, fuck, I got to train this person, probably not a good client relationship where,
Right.
if you're like, shit, yeah, man, I got OJ next, and I got to see Mark later, then I got Monique, and I'm going to have a chat. It's going to be great. We're enjoying the time, and it's mutual.
Right.
You mentioned something actually quite interesting on the podcast. I will bring this up because it's salient. Some trainers though do make it all about them a bit too much, where it's a bit like, well, make sure it's a 50-50, or you don't sort of make everything about you, because again, it's the client's time. But the concept I started thinking about is, actually, this is interesting, and I can't believe I'm only really thinking about this now, is how often do you see anyone else once or even multiple times a week, depending on, how often you train someone as a client? And it got me thinking, I'm like, man, like there's only one other person in your life. And that is if you've got a partner, or possibly a sibling, or the person you live with. So I thought, man, actually, that is such a unique relationship. And I had this conversation with Dr. Stu McGill a couple of weeks back, the back mechanic, and he said something phenomenal. It was a great reference for trainers, but he says the coach has one of the most inspiring and impactful abilities to change someone's life, purely based on the fact of the health and obviously what we can do via strength training and nutrition, but also the regularity, because you don't see your hairdresser generally every week. You're not seeing the chiro every week, or you probably shouldn't be after a while. And I started to think, and I thought, oh, actually, yeah, that's really unique. And I started asking my clients about this, and they were like, yeah, actually, it's this different kind of relationship. Like it slots somewhere in like between a friendship and I don't know, something else. But I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, but it got me thinking, and I was like, shit, this is much more powerful than perhaps even I gave it credit for.
Sure, absolutely. No, I agree with that. And I've said something similar in talks before, that nobody else in some people's lives maybe has as much impact, other than their spouse, or maybe a mentor, boss at work, somebody that they're seeing, daily. And rare is it that the person when they're coming to see us, it's not like a tug of war.
Mm.
You know, with your spouse, there can be this tug of war with the relationship or the situation that you're trying to hash out. Same thing with your boss and work. There's always a bit of power differential there, and rare is it that we have something where we're going there and it's all about me. You know, I can just go here and relax, and this person is there to take care of me. They're there to make sure that I don't get hurt. They're there to help me get stronger, to feel better about myself, to, you know, maybe give me nutrition advice, whatever, you know, the person's scope is. And it's rare that we have situations like that. Maybe like if somebody goes to therapy, but again, if they do that, most people aren't going to therapy maybe that often,
Mm.
or maybe for a short time in their life or whatever. But you know, somebody like me, I've literally had clients for decades, and
Yeah.
so I've seen them more. I mean, for some people, especially when they're like maybe they're in a young marriage and they have kids, they're hardly seeing their spouse. They sleep in the same bed, but other than that, their life, they hardly have time to talk to each other. You know, they're freaking busy, and so you know, I'm one of the few times where they can just like breathe out and relax and have some me time. You know, and so I think that is very valuable, and you know, that also means that there's a lot of responsibility on us too, because you know, you have to take that relationship seriously. You can't take advantage of it, and you can't try to manipulate people, you know, emotionally. I've seen, I just have seen young trainers try to like I'll tell you this. I talked to like one of my clients who I'd had for 25 years, and she's
Mm-hmm.
since passed away. But if you want to find out why somebody's still seeing you, ask them. And you know, that's what I did.
Mm.
And so she said, "You're always happy to see me. You never seem to be having a bad day. And I know that you're going to show up and take care of me, and I don't have to think, but you're always going to do what's best for me, even if that means, you know, not working out that day and you don't get paid, you know." And so that's just the way that I've lived and tried to do things with clients. But I've seen like young trainers who they'll have clients and they pull the client into their shit.
Mm.
They're maybe they've got a girlfriend, they're having girlfriend troubles, or they're having money troubles, and the client, well, I'll loan you some money, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And basically, it's making you out to be like a kid. Like
Mm.
you're not a professional, you don't have your shit figured out, and it doesn't mean that you can't have a back and forth relationship with your clients. That's different, but that usually takes all time. People that
Mm.
I've trained for 10, 15, 20 years, you know, I'll let my guard down and I'll talk to them maybe about things that I wouldn't talk about with somebody who's, you know, only been with me for a number of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I don't want to bring any of my shit to the table, any of my stuff to the gym. Man, they're paying me, in my opinion, to have the hour of their life. They want to have fun. They want to feel like they accomplished something. And I'm there to provide that. And I'm not going to be able to provide that if I'm telling them about, oh, I just got in a fight with so and so, or, you know, oh, I can't pay my car payment this week, you know, this kind of thing. That's just, I wouldn't want that if I was the paying client. And I've been the paying client. I have a boxing coach and stuff like that. I wouldn't want to go there and then have my boxing hour be about their personal problems. That's
Mm.
not cool. But I see that happen a lot with young trainers, and I don't know if they just don't know any better. I don't know if it's a manipulation because I think, you know, maybe the clients will stay with them if they know how bad they're hurting, and so maybe they won't leave me if you know they know. I don't know, but I just think it's a complete wrong way to go about things.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely got to be a line in the sand. And as you said, it clients who've been with you longer, you can open up to. But I also find there's different clients have different avenues of conversation, although there's some common ground with each of them. But you know, you'll find it's this adaptability, and it's a beautiful like paint palette that you've got to draw from with clients, because you know, you've got clients who are more maybe corporate and they're more professional, and you know, you learn about finance. And I find inadvertently, and you mentioned this before about the building the relationships with people, whether it's through doing things like this, through podcasts, inadvertently, whether it's through other online social mediums, but you build this army of professionals where you go and you can kind of correlate them together and go, oh, right. Oh, you need someone to tint your car. I train a guy who tints cars. You want me to put you into, yeah, okay, cool. And then they're friends, and then they might train together now and again, or at least they've exchanged services. So it's amazing. You get this full 360. You train actors and performers and people like that, and it's just amazing. Sometimes you said before, oh, yeah, actually I can refer someone on, and I know they're a good person, and I know they provide a level of service, and that in and of itself, I think, not only valuable, but it builds this momentous effect. And then, like you said, you end up training the partner, and then the kid, and then next minute you got the family, and then with yourself, you've been coaching that long, you get the next generation. That must be quite resounding. I wanted to ask you, Chad.
Crazy thing.
Yeah,
well, I'll just say this real quick.
Go on.
I've had two people that were child actors that I trained, and another one got particularly famous at it, but that were child actors that are now adults. They're probably 30 years old, that have both become trainers. And I think that's cool. I did something right, that they thought that what I did with them was so impactful and so fun that when the whole acting thing didn't work out for them, that's what they went to for a career. So that just, I love that, the fact that I was able to actually have this like legacy of kid clients who became trainers and wanted to help other people out themselves. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to actually, that was similar to what I wanted to know. Is there any clients that have left? And I know you've had, hundreds at this point, there's so many, but is there any that really stick with you in terms of an expression, or they've left a mark positively for one reason or another? Is there any clients that you're like, wow, you know what, that individual, that was a special relationship, or continues to be a special relationship? I'm just interested to know if there's any particular clients that you've got that affinity with, where you're like, wow, or they taught you something really valuable via you coaching them over the years, if
Sure.
there is something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, because I do tend to keep clients for so long, everyone has an impact like that to some degree, or we probably wouldn't still be in each other's lives, for that long. But there's certainly been a couple. One I mentioned briefly earlier, the woman Barbara, that private place that I trained at when I first moved to LA. She became my client there. She went with me to the Gold's Gym. She went with me to my private place, and she trained with me for nearly 25 years until she passed away because of an unexpected stroke. And over that time with her, I'd seen her through a lot of stuff. I mean, she didn't start training with me until she was in her 50s, and she had never been married. She was a businesswoman, very successful out here in LA. And, I knew her when she met her husband, who has now been a client of mine for 20 years and still comes in. But I saw her through, at one point, she donated a kidney to her sister, and her sister is still alive. Her sister's 80 some years old now, and living on her kidney from 20 some years ago. It's amazing. Then she fell off of her retaining wall. This is 20 some years ago, right before my wedding, and shattered her arm. And they said that she'd never have use of that arm again. It was so messed up, and we rehabbed it and got it back working. And then she got breast cancer, and then they removed the sentinel node on her right side, and she couldn't lift her arm overhead. And they said, you should never lift more than 5 or 10 pounds ever again. We rehabbed her on that. She actually, at her late 60s, almost 70, she was getting pretty strong, and I had started powerlifting at that point. And I told her, I said, hey, Barbara, just so you know, all of the powerlifting records in your age group are open in the state of California. So I think you could set them. You're strong enough now to do it. Even if you're just doing the bar, I think you can set them if you want to. She goes, okay. And so she did. And then we went to Bench Press Nationals, which happened to be out here in Palm Springs that year. and she won that. And so then we went to Prague, Czech Republic, and she won worlds. So she went from somebody who was never going to have use of her left hand again, or never lift more than 5 or 10 pounds on her right, to benching like 75 pounds in Prague and winning the bench worlds at like 69 years old. So to see somebody through 25 years of their life, especially through kind of those golden years, and through those challenges, and then unfortunately the cancer came back, and in the course of getting ready to treat that, she had this stroke, and she passed away. But the mark she left on me as a human being and on my career, she was such a mentor to me as a business person. And that was somebody that, because of the relationship we'd established over so many years, I'd already trained her for 9 years before I opened my gym. So of course I'm going to talk to her, a successful businesswoman, when I open my gym, and when I have certain questions, what she think I should do, get her advice. That's a much different thing, because we were more equals, and then she was more of a business mentor in that regard. So yeah, she had a huge impact on me, and always will. But interestingly, somebody else who had a great impact on me was a guy by the name of Ishmael Lotz. And Ishmael is from the Netherlands, and I met him. He just happened to be staying in LA. He's a filmmaker, and he came to LA. He was trying to, transition to Hollywood, as all filmmakers, want to do. And he was staying close to the gym. And I don't know how he found me. I don't recall. But while he was in town, he wanted to work out. And he was working out partly because he was also dealing with cancer. He had lung cancer that had spread. And, it was not the greatest prognosis, but he was under treatment, and things were good. So I didn't train him for very long at all. And he had to go back to the Netherlands and continue treatment. And then of course, COVID hit. So he's stuck in the Netherlands and doesn't get back to come visit LA. And over the course of time, seeing on social media, his treatments are changing, chemo and all that. And so I could tell things weren't, going well. And just a week ago Saturday, we'd reached out briefly over Instagram, messaging each other, and he'd been like kind of doing a podcast that he'd kind of started just as conversations with friends. I think he kind of wanted to leave this legacy behind. So I'm like, hey, if you want me to be on your podcast, happy to do it anytime. And fortunately on that Saturday, we'd been messaging, and he decided to call me, because you can call over Instagram. So he called, and I could tell he was really tired. But we got to have a nice brief conversation. And the next day on Sunday, I'd found a picture of us from when he was training with me. I gave him a shirt that said "Fuck Cancer," and I got one myself. So we were wearing our "Fuck Cancer" shirts, and it was just a great picture of us smiling in better days. And I messaged that to him, and I just said in Dutch, the only Dutch I know, I said "Ik hou van jou," which means "I love you." And he said "Ik hou van jou, Chad." And that was the last message we had. He passed away on Wednesday of this week. Yeah. So that's somebody that I barely trained, didn't know that well at all, really, but there was a connection there. And that's powerful. And I don't know too many jobs that can be that powerful, where you can be there for somebody even halfway around the world. Obviously, we had established that in the one-on-one setting at the gym, but I guarantee you, if I had had semi-privates, or if I had done small groups, he and I would not have established a relationship that we did in such a short period of time. And so what he taught me was, I've never seen somebody who was so in love with life and still making plans. I mean, here I could tell on the phone when I was talking to him on that Saturday that this may be the last time we talk to each other, yet we're still making plans to shoot this podcast together. I mean, this guy just loved life and lived every day, to as full as he could, even when he was feeling like crap. So for me, it taught me gratitude, gratitude for what I have, for the people I have in my life, for continuing to be an impact. I was fortunate, to be on the Iron Culture podcast. A lot of people reached out to me after that I would have never had a chance to be in front of before. Mm-hmm. And then obviously you reached out to me, now being on this podcast, to be able to pay it forward and hopefully make somebody else's, whether it's their business, their life, their relationship with their clients. I mean, it's all legacy. It's all what you can leave behind. And so that's what it's all about to me. And that's why I don't stop doing what I'm doing. It has zero to do with bench pressing and 6-pack abs or macros or anything like that. It has everything to do with being an impactful, empowering source of support and inspiration for the people in my life. And hopefully that just goes out like water in a drop of stone, in water, and the ripples go out from there.
I'm sure it will. It's some powerful stuff, and I appreciate you sharing that, Chad. It really is why we do what we do, and I think there's a common theme, with what we've been talking about. It's people, and it's always about people. No one wins the game alone. And another word that begins with P that comes to mind is purpose. And I think, there's this concept now of, do what makes you happy, and what should I do? And everyone's chasing money, and they're kind of losing sight of perspective. Like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You can make $1 million a million ways, but ultimately, what gives you a purpose when you get up? Like you said, like, what would you do if you didn't do training and training people? Like, what would you do? Right? You'd probably be a little bit, yeah, you'd probably be a bit lost. I know I would, because I love training myself, but I like training other people because it's that natural continuum. And again, sometimes it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. It's, hey, here's something that has so many more carryovers, because we talk about strength training and resistance, but it's all of these other things that come from it that we never thought, or perhaps we didn't think until we do it. Overcoming adversity. There's a dog. He made an appearance. There he is. I was waiting. And being able to then give that and pay it forward. I think always, in our journey, it's important. When I talk to trainers now, and I'm able to get to, even on my journey, with training people, for me, it's been 15 years. So I'm not quite at the 30-year mark. And
that's a long time, though. I mean, most trainers, I think less than 1% make it 15 years. So you're in a very, minute number of people who've been successful. I'm just a unicorn. I mean, I just was the right place at the right time, had good mentors, married the right person, all those kind of things fell into place for me to help me be successful. But anybody who's made it 15 years or longer in personal training is doing something right. I think they've got it figured out, because the people who aren't in it for the right reasons, who think it's a quick buck, they're long gone before 15 years, long before 15 years. And people will figure you out. People will know if you're insincere, if you're not genuine and authentic. So you can't fake that for very long.
No. And I think that's the thing we often forget. Like, again, paying it forward to other trainers. I said, well, look, systems and processes wise, this is how we want to set up the business. This is how we can generate leads. But the one thing you can't teach to a degree is just that personality. And that's where you've got to, like you said, get in a big gym, fail early, fail fast, or whatever you want to call it. It's only feedback. There's no such thing. See if it's for you. Because it isn't, like you said, what people think. It's not about just getting everyone in and everyone's going to follow the plan. Fuck, they're not. There's a shit storm going on in life all the time. And, it's like, let's just start with something and let's just build it out from there. But ultimately, again, it's, what I said to you at the start of the podcast, Chad, and you've sort of embodied that and give it life and definition through this conversation. It's having meaningful conversations with people on that given day, whatever it is. And sometimes it isn't getting under the bar. Sometimes it's, hey, I don't really want to talk today. I just want to work it out with the iron. We're probably, as trainers, the most unqualified psychologists or therapists out there. And I think a lot of us could probably make that switch to the couch and go, okay, so, because as you said, sometimes if you think about the workout, it's not that grand. You have your good workouts, but sometimes it's, people come and this, and you can tell they've just been waiting for this space that you hold for people. and they just want to have a conversation and they just want to be heard because maybe their partner's not listening to them or they've had a frustrated day. And I think as men, we have to learn this. Sometimes it's not about fixing it. Sometimes it's
Right.
just about it's listening, right? It's just
Right.
hold the
That's a
space.
hard thing though.
Listen.
You're right. For guys, we want to fix stuff,
Mm.
you know. And so yeah, you're right. Being a good listener. And if somebody asks you, that's different, you know. But if they don't ask you for your opinion, if they just are talking, man, let them talk and just listen. And maybe they'll need a hug at the end. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times a client has started crying. You know, you haven't been training very long if you don't have had a client cry during the sessions, you know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just that happens. And that's okay. And you got to be okay with that. And, you know, I see sometimes trainers online and they're like, oh, I don't want to be a cheerleader. I don't want to be a rep counter. I don't want to be this. Like, well, then why are you in the business? You know, it's like, I'm definitely a cheerleader for my clients. I may not be doing it rah it kind of way, but you know, I'm definitely there to support them and encourage them. And, you know, some people need a little more rah and some people need a little more, you know, low key. I got you, you know. But there's nothing wrong with that. And of course I count my clients reps. It's like, it's I want them to focus on form. I can do the reps. That's not that hard for me to count reps. You know, I can cue people and count. It's fine. So yeah, but again, it's just making sure that it's all about the client and not you. You know, now obviously we all have the ways we like to do things, but I modify them. I modify them on the fly. If I need to for a certain client or a certain workout or whatever, it's not a problem. It's not that precious. You know, I'm okay. You know, I'm not so great that I can't modify what I do to suit the purpose.
Exactly. I think I know you've done quite a few talks as well, and you probably got this, but I'm always astounded by some of the clients I work with who are like, oh, you know, you should be a life coach. And I'm using air quotes because I don't know, it makes me cringe a little bit because I'm like, right. I'm only 30 years old. I don't be a life coach. But I think it's more a case of being able to go on a platform, whether it's a stage, whether it's in a business, whether it's on a podcast like this. And again, we've had this conversation, it's raw, it's organic. We've talked about experiences, but we've not set, oh, we've got to talk about this and we've got to hit this. And it's like, no, oftentimes people are going to get different things from this conversation and they're going to read between the lines. They're going to hear different things. You know, it's like you watch a movie, you watch it back, you see different things. You're like, shit, I never saw that, because depends where you're at in your life.
Right.
But I don't know if you've got this a lot where people are like, oh, you know, Chad, like you should do this, you know, this talk and whatnot. Maybe that has led to talks, or, you know, people have said you should create this and create that. And again, I think by just sharing your story through words and expression, and we've lost the art of storytelling, which is another, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I've had a couple of epiphanies lately about storytelling and how the lost art. And that's what we used to do as humans. We'd sit down the campfire or wherever, even the great tables or with your family, and you all share your stories. And there's something quite magic about that, but it's not, you can't put your finger on it. And if it's premeditated, it doesn't work. And I don't know, I'm fascinated with that lately. And I've been coming up with some ideas for, I think, people to tell more stories, because we always go, oh, we don't have a story. We have a story. We all have a story. There's the one we tell other people, and there's the one we tell ourselves.
Right.
They're often very different. I've got some more rapid fire questions. I've got 3 that I like to ask, Chad. They're a bit more fun in nature. So whatever comes to mind, and then we'll wrap up with my final question, which I ask all my guests. But the first one is, if you could choose a superpower, what would it be and why? And you're very welcome to make one up. There's no rules here. What do you reckon you'd choose?
Well, you know, it's pretty hard to pass up flight. You know, I mean, being able to fly it's got to be such an exhilarating feeling. And to be able to do it knowing that you're not going to crash, you know, it's one thing like going up in a plane, but if you're always like worried, well, shit, you know, planes crash. But if you're like Superman, you're not worried about, I'm going to crash. You can just fly completely, you know, unencumbered by any kind of negative thought or whatever. So yeah, I would love to be able to fly and get that bird's eye view of the world. I think it would be a pretty amazing thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the one, I think it's a natural inbuilt desire for most humans to kind of want to experience that. And we have such a fear of falling. Yeah, that's kind of
Oh
inbuilt in
yeah,
us as well. So I think,
absolutely.
we're almost removing a fear, replacing it with an ability and going, fuck, like, wow, like I'll just fly over to that building or fly to Spain or whatever it might be. There's so many great avenues with that. What about your favorite food? If you had, a perfect combination, and it could be starter, main, dessert. Yeah, what you go to when Friday, Saturday night? What's the thing that you just can't say
Right.
no to?
Well, I mean, it's always a battle between pizza and lasagna.
Oh,
It's like,
nice.
I mean, I
Both.
can't go wrong with either one. It's, I'm not going to turn either of them down. So, yeah, pizza and lasagna. I don't need dessert if I've got pizza and lasagna. I mean, not that I would, I like ice cream and cake and all that stuff, but I've never been somebody who the sweets were like my problem.
Mm.
It's that savory, greasy, salty stuff. It's like that. It's like, oh my God, it's so good. So yeah, if it was anything, it would be pizza and lasagna. And they can battle it out for who's number one.
Oh, you can't go wrong with Italian though. My mom, my
Oh,
mom's
oh
my
shit.
mom's Italian, so we always do. We have pasta night every week as well. Thursdays, it's great.
Oh man.
I
Yeah,
posted
so
on I
come on.
posted on the story. I'm like, who's coming for pasta night? And it just sort of bringing friends round in a circular fashion. Everyone's like, oh, I come to the next one, but we got to get like a big
Well,
one
once
together.
COVID's over, do not be surprised if I show up at pasta night. I'm just
Hey
saying.
man, you are you are very welcome. You find yourself in the Gold Coast, more than welcome.
I will just fly on over with my superpower and
Mate, it's exactly right. We get it, which leads nicely into my next question, which is if you could invite. So for this, pasta, the lasagna, the pizza, if you could invite 2 to 3 people, dead or alive, around this table at this moment in time, who would you invite to have and share some lasagna and pizza with?
well, I mean, my grandma, my grandma raised me. She's been gone for a long time. So she wouldn't even have to say anything. As long as she was just there, beside me, that would be great. My uncle, who's also raised me, he's been gone for a while now too. So those two people I miss a great deal. Um, and I mean, like Barbara and Ishmael that I talked about before. I mean, those two people were very impactful in my life. It'd be great to be able to tell them that in person,
Hmm.
you know, one
Yeah,
more time. So
yeah.
yeah, it would be those people.
For sure, man. Definitely. I think if we all had that opportunity, sometimes people, animals as well, they're taken from us spontaneously. And I think when we all experience that in life, and we do at some point, it's inevitable, but it's a really quaint reminder to not take things for granted. And as you said, gratitude is really big. And it's hard. I know, guys, and people listening, it's really hard because you do when people are there in your life or things are good, you don't think about the bad, but sometimes we've got to take a step back. And if we start our days with maybe a minute of gratitude and go, what am I grateful for right now?
Right.
Oftentimes we can be in a better position to savor those relationships, because like you said, we don't know when they're up, but perhaps that's what makes it beautiful, and that's what makes it precious, because it isn't infinite. It's something that could go at any time. So no, I really love that, Chad. And my last question, which I like to ask all my guests, it's a signature question, if you will, which which is can you identify and share with us, and you've shared a few, but a fear that you may have had or still have, what it is and what you've learned from overcoming it, or if you are still facing it, what you have learned from this experience or this said fear.
Sure. Well, I think we're all to some degree, we have, especially in training, we have imposter syndrome, that people are going to figure out that like we're full of shit. We're just some trainer. I mean, so I think once I got over myself about, what, no, you do know what you're doing and it is of value. And no, it may not be something that will ever make you, famous or a gazillionaire or whatever, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have value.
Mhm.
Both to me as a human being, and the growth of myself, but also to all the clients that I have impact on. And, you forget too the impacts you have on your clients, um, by empowering them, by giving them confidence. The relationships that they have with other people you've never met are likely improved. And so, maybe their relationship with their kids or their boss or whatever. And so, again, it's that ripple effect. And so, I think, once I realized that I was comfortable with who I was as a human being, and that was enough, and I didn't have to prove anything to anybody other than myself, and just be comfortable in that, and then just give back after that. Because I remember days when I was insecure, and my stomach was in knots over how am I ever gonna move forward, and what's going to happen. And now it's like, no, now it's an exciting thing. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, even in spite of all the crap we've been going through over the last couple of years, I'm still excited by the potential of what the next day is going to be, what's going to happen next year. What new place can I go travel to? And I never really think about the fact that, I mean, I know it logically. It's like, okay, I'm 53 years old now. It's like I'm probably closer to the grave than not. And again, it doesn't really matter, because look at the people I've talked about who have already passed. I'm not guaranteed a certain number of years. I'm not guaranteed to make it through the night. So you just have to live each day for what it is. And not every day has to be some great, huge, like when we've gone to the Oscars for my wife. Yeah, those are cool things, but most days aren't like that. Most days are just the conversations and the connections we have with the people that are in our lives on a daily basis. It's no grand thing. And that should be okay. It should be okay to be fulfilled, by having that relationship, and that comfortableness with who you are as a human being, and realize that there's nothing missing. You're enough, and go for it. Do what you want to do, and give back and pay it forward.
Mm. That's such an appropriate way to round out what I think has been a really insightful and once again valuable conversation for people about just getting back to basics and doing things that are simple in life, and that ultimately is, like you said, what strings it together. It's nothing massive, it's nothing grandiose. Sure, there's the highlights and whatnot, but I think it's all of the things that you know are bringing life together, or the cohesion for which of the daily activities and the small wins and the conversations and the people that you see and the activities. And we've got to seek solace in that. And sometimes it's having, or listening to a podcast like this, or even, speaking to people like yourself with a wealth of knowledge that reminds us that, hey, you know what, maybe it doesn't have to be, we watch so much TV these days, and
Right.
people kind of, yeah, right, people are
I'm guilty of it too.
idealizing. Yeah, I mean, we're human. And I think, you mentioned like imposter syndrome. Man, that is shit, that's so huge. That seems to, like, it's really fascinating with, like, I asked that question and the answer is actually always the same every single time. It's almost a trick question now. And I think, oh, this is weird, but we express it differently. But the human need and desire is always the fear of not being enough, or fear of failure, or just not achieving something. And that is just, and for me, looking back and kind of taking this observation, I go, okay, well, that's quite interesting, then, isn't it? Because if that continues to come up over 100 and odd podcasts with people from all walks of life, with all different, backgrounds and skills and ethnicities and fears, but they always pick that one.
Right.
Interesting
Well,
stuff.
I think we all have a desire to belong, you
Mm.
know, and so we want to feel like we belong, whether it's, in a social circle, we want to feel like we belong, or if it's in a career that we've chosen for ourselves, or if it's maybe we're part of a team of some kind. We want to feel like we belong, like we're a part of something bigger. And I think that's a lot of reasons why bad stuff happens, because there's a lot of people out there that, for whatever reason, life's maybe dealt them a raw hand. Maybe, they didn't know how to go about accomplishing what they wanted to in life. And so they don't feel like they've done anything. And so they fall into some of this group think, because it's a place for them to belong. And so then they can just spit out whatever the group think is, because it gives them that sense of having that thing that they didn't have. I think it's a very powerful thing. I think the lack of it is very powerful too. I mean, when it boils down to it, it really all comes down to, we all want to feel love, right? And so, I mean, you'll see that when they study, infants that have been in like orphanages, and the nurses or the caretakers didn't hold them. They didn't have that bonding with another human at the start of life. It ends up kind of, messing them up. I think we all have that to some degree, that we need to feel like we are loved, and we want to love somebody else. We want to feel like we belong, and we're not an outsider, and we're not strange or different or weird for whatever reason, whatever we think normal is. And so yeah, I think that's a very powerful thing. And it doesn't surprise me that it has shown up time and time again in your podcast, if people are being honest with the results, because I think that's the biggest fear that most of us have, I would think. Unless you're a psychopath.
This is true. There's always an exception to the rule. Yes. In every yin, there's a bit of yang and all of that stuff. Yeah. Well, it's true. But again, I think that perhaps is what balances it out. That's for sure. But Chad, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom, some of your experience to date. For people who do want to reach out and perhaps learn more about you, or they just want to follow along, where are the best places to be able to do that?
So I'm usually most active on Instagram. It's just at Chad Landers. Yeah, I've been around a long time, so when Instagram started, I got my name. So yes. At Chad Landers. About Chad Landers. I'm on Facebook. I have a pushprivatefitness.com is my gym website, but if you just put chadlanders.com, it will still take you there, I think. So yeah, just look for Chad Landers somewhere, and even Google it, and I'll come up. So if you want to get a hold of me, there's a way.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And as ever, for everyone listening and watching, I'll put those links in the description. Follow along. Please feel free to reach out. And again, thank you for everyone who's been listening. Make sure, again, we've talked about paying it forward. If you like this episode, share it with someone who you think might get something out of it, or perhaps who needs to listen to it. Again, it helps the channel grow, and we can get this out to more people. And at the end of the day, provide some positivity. So again, guys, the score. I've got to say it. Like, comment if you've got something valuable to add, or if you've got a question for me and Chad. Subscribe for more. And if you're on podcast platform, apparently now, new thing, Spotify, you can rate the podcast even easier. So if you go to Spotify, I know a lot of people are listening now more than Apple, iTunes. So you can go over and you don't even have to write anything. You can just give us a star rating as well. So we'd appreciate that, as long as it's safe to do so. As ever, we will see you back with another guest soon. And until the next time, stay fearless. For those of you who are confused, frustrated, and sick and tired of not seeing the results that you want or deserve, make sure that you click the Apply for Coaching button in the description below and line up a completely free consultation with myself, where we can discover if it's a good fit as client and coach, and take your health and physique to the next level once and for all.